This is a special webinar to talk about the C-band repack that's going on. Most people are aware of it. With us on the call today is John George, who is finally got his earphone working, I think, and Mark Johnson. I wanted to mention something right at the beginning. There was an article, and Mark, you might want to say something about this. Eric Wilder, who's with Westwood One, said this morning in an article in Radio World, this is a highly complex issue with legal, technical, and financial implications. And certainly it is. There's a lot going on. This has been going on for a couple of years, I think, to try to get it started. And now we're reaching some deadlines, and some complications have come up with the FCC and the satellite people. And I've asked Mark Johnson if he would be with us. Mark is with Link Up Communications. He was on the NAB webinar just a couple of days ago with all the participants, the satellite people and the FCC. And I asked if he would join us and sort of unravel some of the tangles and all the information that's floating around. So, any of you that have a question that you would like to ask, the best way to do it is to open up your chat window, which is either at the top of your screen or at the bottom of the screen, and you can type a message in, and Mark and I and John will be looking at it and try to answer all your questions. And just for your general information, we are recording this, and we'll have it up on the ABA YouTube site probably sometime this afternoon. You can just go to YouTube and search for ABA Engineering Academy, and that video will be there under C-band repack. So with that, Mark, I'm going to turn the program over to you and give us a little overview, I guess, to begin, and then you can actually, we'll jump right into the all the complexities of what the stations are going to have to do themselves.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. And you know, Eric Weiler really put it all together, and he understands, because it is more than just a technical issue. It's a financial issue and it's a legal issue, because you're not just saying, okay, I'm going to get a pile of money and I'm going to put a filter on. It's not just that simple, because there are so many variables out there as to what's going to happen. You're basically taking on the role and responsibility that SES and Intelsat have been studying for the last 3 years. And you're going to make a decision to take on that role, and you've only got 2 weeks to research it and understand legally what you're agreeing to, technically what you're agreeing to, and then financially what you're agreeing to. Because and I said it, and Eric has said it, in a lot of these locations, the SES, Intelsat, and Telsat have all studied where things are going to go. And there's timing, and you know, there's the timing of where the programming is going to be. Now, for broadcasting, it's broadcast radio. You know, it's a little less complex than it is for television, because television, you've got multiple dishes. Some of them receive programming in occasional use throughout the day. You know, they're taking an hour program here, you know, an hour program here, just different content that's going. They're putting in, you know, the things that are going on to their sub HD channels. So maybe Me TV, Cozy, you know, things like that. And everything has got to either move up to the top 200 kilohertz or 200 megahertz of the satellite it's on, or it's going to have to move to one of the new satellites. There are 6 satellites that are a part of this process, and those 6 satellites will be launched over the next 5 years. And during that time, during that time, SES, Intelsat, and Intelsat have come up with plans of how to keep people's services continued through the period of not only filter installation, but also as the different broadband companies come together and put start putting stuff in your market. And there's a tiered set. There's the top 46 markets will auction 120 meg starting in December. You may not know this, but just below satellite, we're right now, and for the last 30, good gracious, 30 something years, almost 40 years, the 3700 to 4200 megahertz has been used for C-band program distribution to radio and television stations, and also cable distribution to the multi-platform video destinations. And that has been solid for 40 years, 3700 to 4200. Well, just below that, and some people may have had WiMAX issues and stuff with that, just below that, at 3550 to 3650, the commission just auctioned that off recently and raised almost $5 billion. So I don't know exactly what the timing is of when those are going to go out, but stations will be responsible for taking care of their own, coordinating with SES or Intelsat through their program provider, and they'll be responsible for making it happen. So let's say you take on that responsibility and you think, okay, I'm just going to put a filter here, and your TV programming, which is on, let's say, Galaxy 3C today. Galaxy 3C at this point is not supposed to be replaced. So that's going to have to go to somewhere else. Well, maybe it's Galaxy 19, or maybe it's Galaxy 16. Well, if you can't see that, or your dish won't move to that location, then you're responsible for whatever it takes to get that done. Maybe that's moving the dish. Well, that's a new foundation. You're taking on a lot of expenses there. Under the FCC plan and what's been studied for the last 2 or 3 years, the satellite companies will not only take the expense of putting in a filter, but they're going to they're going to do what it takes to make you whole. So if that means you need a new location for that dish, or maybe you need a new dish, those are all expenses that are reimbursable to SES, Intelsat, and Intelsat. And that's all in the cost catalog. And I think what complicated this whole situation and threw us kind of all in a mix is, there really wasn't much about the lump sum, and there was no numbers at all in the preliminary cost catalog and the preliminary public notice that came out. So when that came out, we all were still focused on, okay, SES and Intelsat are going to send us out, and they're going to send people out like us all over the country to put in filters, put in new dishes, and they have plans. So for example, we have a customer who has 60 sites on Intelsat, ANIC F1R. and F1R is not scheduled to be replaced. So that has to move to ANIC F3 as part of this whole deal. And filters have to be installed. Well, they've got 6 locations out of the 60 where those dishes cannot see F3. So Intelsat has put together a plan and submitted that plan to the FCC to replace those antennas, move them or replace them. All right. So that's the plan. Then they get reimbursed by what's called the clearinghouse. And the clearinghouse has a whole, all of the different things in that cost catalog, travel, new filter, new dish, engineering. There's even lines for, having somebody at SES or Intelsat prepare that information for reimbursement. So everything has got a line item. So everybody was focused on that. And then the final cost catalog comes out, and we have the 89.48 for a single dish with a single feed. And that kind of, threw everybody who maybe was only watching this, kind of cursorily. And now you've got, fortunately, you've got 2 weeks. I mean, right now, this would have been due Friday, Monday, the 31st. But now, thanks to some, people probably at the NAB, I know SBE was involved in asking for more time. Now you got a little bit more time, but you need to understand what are my responsibilities? What are my liabilities? What am I taking on here? And if you understand where the programming is going to be, so let's take MeTV for example. So if you know where MeTV is going to be, that's the programming that you get on this antenna. Or maybe it's MeTV and Cozy, or you've got maybe 2 or 3 networks coming off of here, or a full-time network and several occasional use stuff. Do some research. Talk to the provider of that. Talk to NBC Universal, or whoever the program provider is, Westwood One, for radio. Talk to them. Ask them. What is our future? The good news for radio. Go back to that. The good news for radio, whether it's Christian radio on SES2, or commercial radio on SES11, or public radio on Galaxy 16. The plans for those networks are all to just move them up to the top 200 megahertz. So for radio, a little less complicated. Don't have, you're not going to have the multiple networks splitting up. They're all going to stay on the same bird, so they're not going to be moving. At this point, the plan is for them to stay where they are, but migrate up. All right, so you're doing that research. If you're in the top 46 market, there's a whole nother layer of research that you need to do. And that begins with the idea that 120 megahertz that we talked about just a minute ago, that they're going to auction off starting in December. You've got to acquire what's being called the red filter. So the red filter will just block 5G that is below 3820. Okay. So they're going to roll out 5G in your top 46 market that is in that 3700 to 3820 Plus, they're probably rolling out what we talked about earlier, the 3550 to 3650. So now you've got all these signals popping up below 3820. So you've got to have the red filter. That's the first filter. Once again, only the top 46 markets, and most likely Panama City. That's a whole another issue based on Hurricane Michael, and anybody from Panama City can ask me about that separately. But a top 46 market, there's going to be a time frame in 2021 when you have to get that first filter, the red filter. You got to get it on, because they're going to start rolling those out at the end of 2021. So you got to be ready. Then after that, they'll auction off in those top 46 markets, and then start probably sometime after that, start auctioning off in other markets the frequencies from 3820 megahertz to 4000 megahertz. And if you're in that top 46 market, you've got to have the timing. Okay, now my programming is maybe at 3900 or 3950. So my programming is in that sweet spot that for about a year and a half, we're going to need the red filter. And then they're going to have to move from there either up above 4,000 megahertz on the same bird, or at that point they have to move to another bird. So now, your first step may be put in the red filter. Your second step may be to move the dish to another bird and install the blue filter. And then at that point, the top 46 markets and the rest of the country, filters need to be in that block signals below 4,000 megahertz. Okay, so that's the technical part of it. You see a little bit about the financial part of it. You might be responsible for a filter, but you might be responsible for two filters. You might be responsible for moving the dish. You might be responsible for putting in a new dish. You can't. There's no one size fits all. There's been a group that I've seen that said everybody take the money. Well, as Eric stated clearly, and we tried to reiterate, everybody doesn't have the same dish. Everybody doesn't take the same programming. Everybody doesn't have the same situation. You've got to research your own situation. Bring somebody in. If you know somebody else, if satellite's not your specialty, ask somebody else, bring somebody else in the SBE chapter, reach out to somebody, at your association, find somebody to ask questions, because there's a lot of antennas out there that are no longer manufactured. And if for some reason there's something wrong with your feed assembly or anything like that, if you take the lump sum, you're responsible for that. And and in the public notice, the FCC is very clear that you taking this, and they state it twice, you're irrevocably taking on the responsibility. You're irrevocably giving up any rights to come back and ask for additional reimbursement. So, all right, so that's kind of the scenario where we're at. The public notice came out, and if you haven't seen the public notice, you shouldn't even start thinking about taking the lump sum until you've gone through it, especially pages 25, 26, and 27. Those are the key pages. Tells you kind of some of the things that are required. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell you everything that's required. And what we found out by being in the NAB meeting with the FCC is there are several other things that are required that are not even mentioned in the public notice. It tells you, put in your coordinates, put in your registration number, put in your location, put in this, certify that that you're using it, you've been using it for the last 90 days, and certify that you're going to continue to use it. All of this stuff. Well, that's great. But what we found out in the meeting with the NAB and the three folks from the FCC, and these were kind of enlightening conversations, and that's available for free on the NAB website. But one of the things we learned was it's got to be signed by an officer of the company. It's got to be either signed under penalty of perjury, or it's got to be notarized. And none of that's in the public notice. None of that's in explanation of what to do. Also, apparently you have to send 2 copies, not in the public notice. So there's a lot of detail that's not in there. So that goes back to Eric's point about there are legal ramifications, but they're pretty clear though, that if something is wrong, it could get thrown out. It could be, they could assume it was perjury. It's just they weren't clear. In fact, it specifically asked if you're a group, and this is not stated in the public notice. If you're a group, let's say you got a group of, let's say Cumulus, and you got 130 owned and operated downlinks. What Eric's told me they have. We got 130 of them. Okay, you mess one up because you have to do it. It's got to be an all or nothing. You can't say, okay, Cumulus in Tallahassee, wants to take the lump sum. Cumulus in Montgomery, wants to stay in. Nope, it's all or nothing. All of your group has to either take the lump sum, or all of your group, any of that you're the owner, and the registration lists you as the owner, and whether it's one or whether it's 130. If you choose to stay in, then you're just choosing to stay in for all of them. If you're choosing the lump sum, you're choosing the lump sum for all of them. It's not clear in the public notice. So something you need to know. There's a lot there, and it just wasn't clear as to whether, if you made a mistake, let's go back to the Cumulus model. If you made a mistake on Tallahassee, does Montgomery and the other 128 get kicked out? That's not clear. And he didn't answer that clearly. So I don't know what the answer is. In fact, the more I do this and the more people I talk to, the more I realize what I don't know. It's kind of the old adage, the more I learn, the less I know. And that's kind of what we've gathered from this. That's kind of a broad overview, Larry.
Yeah, I had a question that actually came in actually on my email just a while ago, and I'm sure John is probably have got these same type calls, but one of them has to do with if the station failed to register their dish back in 2018, and now that all this is coming up, is there any thoughts with the commission that they may open that back up again and to register your site?
I will tell you this. I have no idea what the commission has done, but every interaction I've had with is, this train is leaving the station. The 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 auction is in December, and the fact that we got 2 extra weeks to think about whether you wanted to lump sum or not, kind of surprised me the way they've been going in the past. SES and Intelsat and Telsat have begged for, ever since the day that registration closed. Was that like August 31st, 2018, something like that? Ever since that day, they've begged for another window, because to the program distribution providers like Westwood, like NBC Universal, and SES and Intelsat and Telsat, they are trying everything they can in this environment to make sure that C-band is reliable and available. They have fought for this. SES and Intelsat have spent millions of dollars testing, coming up with these ideas, putting forth the C-band alliance plan, and the FCC is, trains leaving the station. So I wouldn't expect that. If you didn't register, your best bet is to stay in touch with your program provider, know if they are staying on the satellite they're on or moving, and know when the filters need to be installed, and try to purchase one. And the other thing is, make sure you purchase one that's SES or Intelsat approved. Do not just buy something that says 5G filter, because SES and Intelsat, back to the millions of dollars they spent designing the filter. And as far as I know, the only people that are at this point that are building their filter is a group called ALGA, ALGA, Microwave, and Microwave Filter Company. Those are the only ones I'm sure of. Richard had a question, and his question was, with all these unknowns, why go with the lump sum? And that's the heart of it. That's the heart of it. If you don't go with the lump sum, and SES or Intelsat is going to take care of everything. They're going to send somebody in there. They're going to install the filter, and one of the things they're going to do. Let's say you've got 3 dishes there, and only one of them's registered. They've committed and stated publicly that as long as it's not some major thing with the others, it's as long as they can just put a filter on, they're going to make sure all 3 of those antennas have a filter. They're going to install them. They're going to make sure they work, and so there's the advantage really of SES or Intelsat. That advantage is they're going to take care of everything. They're going to do it in the timing according to their schedule. Richard, if somebody knows all of the parameters, they know all of the responsibilities and drawbacks, and they still want to take the lump sum, then that's something that I think becomes a business decision. How much risk are they willing to take on? And so I wouldn't tell somebody to do it. I wouldn't tell them not to do it, but I would tell them only do it if you know the risk, your situation. Richard's, you've got a brand new 3.7 meter antenna at one of your locations. Well, that mitigates some of the concern that I would have, because there's a lot of places, and I mentioned this, there's a lot of dishes out there that are out of production, rusted, might not move. The bolts between the LNB and the feed horn might be, rusted out and would need to be drilled out. Maybe you need to do feed assembly. That could get expensive. So you got to mitigate the risk if you're going to take it. But in a major market like you're in, Richard, you could go through $8,000 pretty quick.
Some more questions on the thing. Let me ask
Yep.
John right quick, like any particular questions that you've been feeling, phone calls from stations, what are they concerned about?
Well, I think the big concern, of course, is what the money situation is going to be like. Some stations want to take the money, and they think they can go buy a dish if they have to replace one for $1,000. The other question is, what happens if a station has to add another dish or two? Are those dishes going to be protected under the new rules?
If they have to add, you mean if they have to add another dish, if they take the lump sum and have to add another dish, or if SES or Intelsat put in another dish for them?
No, if they have Intelsat or one of the companies, and they put in a new, say, additional 2 dishes for them, an additional dish, will that be protected under the new rules, just like the licensed dish will?
Well, basically what you have is you have a almost kind of like a halo around the registered dish. And it's like somewhere, it's kind of varied. At times they've talked about 2,000 feet. Other times they've talked about 1,800 feet. But there's in a sense, a halo around that dish where Verizon and AT&T cannot put a 5G radiator. And the real 5G filters have 70 dB of isolation over that 20 meg guard band. And as long as they're not within that 2,000 or 1,800 feet, you should not get a 70 dB signal. That's the theory. That's that's what Intelsat and SES spent all that time working at. I've seen one 5G filter that's out there, and I looked at the spec sheet, and it's like 60 dB of isolation. That's not the real deal. So,
A couple other questions there on the chat room you can see.
Yeah, Mark Vora said, Brad, whether the lump sum money could be used towards installing fiber and abandoning satellite. Your thoughts? Well, I think that's one of the reasons that the lump sum wound up being the amount it was, because and if you read the public notice, there's a lot of conversation about cable head ends, and I think that some cable groups, larger cable groups who wanted fiber went in and petitioned on Capitol Hill to get this lump sum. Because if you look at the ones, like, okay, you got, multiple feeds, like, like on you can put like a 3 satellite feed on a single 3.8 or 4.5 meter dish at a cable head end. So you're picking up 2 polarities each on 3 dishes. So now you got 6. It was like $50-something thousand for the lump sum. So I think they spent some time on Capitol Hill and pushed for this. Let's see. Paul Manuel said we have 2 single feed dishes, 1 radio, 1 fixed on a cable TV channel, 2 3-meter dishes, feed horns, LNBs, and filters can be had for 2, 3. But feed filters can be had for less than $7,000. Yeah, you could buy those components. How much is it going to cost you to put them in, get them aligned, get them set up? And those are the business decisions you have to make. And so you're taking on that responsibility. I know that if we were installing, 3.7 meter dishes, the whole installation, 4 days, 2 guys, the rental equipment to dig the pedestal mount, put the pedestal in, that's part of the business decision you have to add to that $7,000. See, Robert Rowe. Aside from radio and cable, our company also offers broadband. Can we opt out of this altogether, or must we give space to what will be our competition? That's a legal question. I wouldn't even know where to begin. I'm assuming by offering broadband, you're talking about WiMAX. I think that would be a complete legal question for your FCC attorney. See, Dave, radio stations still using old solid TVRO dishes. Will SES provide free upgrade to new 3.7 with new foundation and installation? We're in Florida in a county mandated 140-mile-an-hour zone, so the dish and foundation is expensive. Yes. That's a good question. If, for some reason or other, the dish, won't serve the purpose, and that, you'd have to talk. What would happen is, here's the plan. So SES is going to move a network. So let's take MeTV, for example. So MeTV gives SES their entire affiliate list. And SES has been, for the last 2 years, studying that affiliate list, looking at Google Earth, looking at Dish Pointer, figuring out, okay, here's the dish, where we're going to be. And then the next step is, if you don't take the opt-out, that when it comes time for transitioning or filtering, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to have their installer call you, and you're going to do a live chat site survey. So they're going to look at it, and if that installer looks at it and says that dish is not going to work, then SES will put in a new dish with the filter. And yes, and we learned, we're in Florida too, Dave, and we learned Hurricane Michael that just doing a hole and putting concrete and a pipe in it will not withstand a 165-mile-an-hour hurricane. We had 4 Prodlin dishes, and typically we always use more concrete. So, I think the manual calls for a 24 or 30-inch hole, and we always went with a 36, and we always went down a foot deeper. So we were always using more concrete. And those round holes with a king post in the middle, and the Prodlins, whichever way the wind was blowing in Panama City from Hurricane Michael, it just pulled that foundation completely out of the ground till the dish was against the ground. And all 4 of those Prodlins in town physically survived, but they all had their foundations pulled out of the ground. So we've gone to just a standard that we're going to do the big pedestal mount. So instead of, a couple of yards of concrete, now we're talking about, 8 yards of concrete. Anywhere along the Gulf Coast, anywhere along the Atlantic, somebody ask us for a dish, we're going to do what you're talking about, Dave, which is a big dish and a foundation. All of that is reimbursable, and those numbers are covered under the SES Intelsat plan, where they take care of the station and they go get reimbursed by the clearinghouse. Mark, again, if SAT company like Intelsat installs filters on my dish and a problem develops, will they support? Yes, absolutely. They're responsible. It goes back to Eric's thing about, it's not just a legal decision or a technical or a financial. It's all of those, and they take on all of that responsibility. The phrase they kept saying is, "We're going to make you whole. We're going to take that 5G auction money and we are going to make you whole." So if they're going to document everything, they're going to have before and after spectrum analyzer pictures. They're going to have GUI images from your receivers. They're going to document all of that stuff. And if something happens, they're the ones that are going to come back and send their guy to mediate that situation and find the interference, and then work with the FCC, and let's say it's Verizon who's causing a problem. That's all going to be on them. But if you take the lump sum, it's all on you.
There are some cases I understand, and this probably applies more to television than it does radio, where some of the IRDs, the inside equipment, will have to be changed because of the bandwidth limitations. Some of them are going to some compression, and you may have to change the inside equipment. And that, if you took a lump sum, then you'd have to pay for that as well, I suppose. Is that correct? Or
that one is kind of a that's kind of a thing where I'm not completely certain. I would think under, as far as the FCC was concerned, you would be responsible. But SES and Intelsat, once again, trying to seed the market to, they're losing 60% of their bandwidth, their inventory. So they're trying their best to make that top 200 megahertz work. So they have a plan. If, okay, let's say I'm going to take NBC Universal and got a batch of programming, and right now it's DVB-S2, but to save bandwidth, we're going to go to DVB-S2X, and I need to seed IRDs. They're already planning to buy all those IRDs, so it's a maybe. That would be a good question for, let's say it's NBC Universal you're getting the programming from, and they're going to be going to S2X. I would check with them. Once again, do that research before you make a decision.
John, you have any other questions that you fielded from affiliates?
No, those have been the primary ones. Just curious, with with the economy the way it is, what happens if a station moves from one location to the other, and they've been licensed at the first location, but they're moving to a new location? No protection, is there?
Mm-mm.
Well, I will mention that there was a station here in Alabama that licensed their downlinks at their studio location, but in the interim, after they did that, they actually moved to a new studio location several blocks away downtown. And the manager called and asked me, would he be protected, or would he have to refile again? I said, why don't you send an email to that International Bureau email address and ask them? And lo and behold, he got an answer back from them, and they said, if you'll send me the information of the new location, we'll take care of it for you, which
Wow.
I thought was very nice.
I think
they
that's
relicensed it.
yeah. See, I think that's I think that's unique. But once the auction starts, the broadband people are going to want to know, where they can buy frequencies, because you got to remember, they've got to put one of those transmission units every 2,000 feet. These are going to be on utility poles, and They're going to be on towers. They're going to be utility poles, and they're going to be every 2,000 feet for coverage at this bandwidth. WXBC asks, how do you determine between SES or Intelsat? So I'm assuming you mean which satellites are which. So all the SES satellites are either, SES1 or SES2, or anything that was AMC, like AMC 18. Those are all owned by SES. Intelsat is all of the Galaxy birds. Galaxy 19, Galaxy 16, Galaxy 3C, those, all the Galaxy birds. Telsat is all the Anik birds, Anik F1R, Anik F3, that type of stuff. Trey says, what's the estimated cost of the filter? Currently, the filter is somewhere, between $300 and $400. And Kevin Kidd, Kevin, has there been any indication that the common radio players will be separated onto different satellites or stay on SES? Everything that I've been told by the people who are directing SES is that all of those people are staying on SES 11 and moving to some of them, like Westwood One, are already in that upper 200. I think ESPN is got to be moved up. But what will happen there is, when they move one of those up, Skyview or Premier or ESPN or Westwood One, if they move, what they do is they send a command to that XDS Pro 1R or Pro 1Q or the new Pro 1SS. They'll send a command over the network and send that. In fact, we've already done that for a customer we have on SES2. We moved them from 7C to 23, and just sent out commands and, moved the whole network in a moment. Now we kept it up for 2 weeks and kept sending the command just in case anybody missed. But, at some point they'll have everybody moved up. And once they do, SES will send out somebody to start putting filters on SES 11 dishes at radio groups. If you take the opt-out, you need to keep yourself informed and know when that timing is and when that needs to be done.
Well, go over the time for all this that needs to be done. I know the larger markets are doing it first, and then the smaller markets, and that seems to be where the confusion is coming.
Yep.
The larger markets seem to have a handle on it and have people that can sort of figure out what to do, but the smaller markets, as we sometimes call them mom and pops, they don't have technical people quite often, and it's sort of a difficult decision to make. So what is the timeline that these people will have to do something?
There's nothing specific, Larry. The only specific auction that's set up right now for 3,700, to 3820 is December, and then after that it's 2023 is the 3820 to 30 to 4,000, and so that's for the top 46 markets. When it comes to Montgomery, or when it comes to Dothan, there's nothing clear, and I think that's what concerns us the most. I mean, we've been passionate about this for 3 years, and because this is how our broadcast clients distribute their programming, and so we've tried to just be as involved and as passionate about this as we can. And, it really, SES and Intelsat are, $10 billion companies, right? They're $10 billion companies. Well, that's still David and Goliath, because they're going up against half $1 trillion companies like Verizon. So, it's David and Goliath. And our joke is that we're the flea on the dog that accompanied David to the fight. And the mom and pop, and it's, it's a difficult time financially, I'm sure, if you're running a small radio station. Let's say you're running a small radio station in Andalusia. It's financially, it's got to be a tough time. So the lump sum has got to look attractive. But do you have the personnel to get it done, or do you know the personnel to get it done? And do you have the time to research all the liabilities you're taking on? So, I think you're right. I think it's a difficult decision for them, and I wish there was an easy answer, but I can't read that public notice and come up with an easy answer.
And the deadline is coming rather quickly on September 14th, I think.
That's right, September 14th.
I have heard that there are some communications attorney firms that are offering to fill out the information and send it in. I'm a little worried. How would they have all the information from your site to fill out something to send to the Bureau?
Well, I mean, a lot of the information is available on your registration. So they could, you could give them the registration numbers and they could go back. But let me pull up the public notice. Actually, is it possible for me to share this, Larry? Let me see if I can.
Just click on share screen.
Yeah, let me share this. Okay, there we go. All right. So these are the 13 things that they outline that you need to know. And a lot of this information should be on the registration. So I assume those attorneys, or, there's also two companies that kind of do this. And both of them had a lot of experience with the TV repack doing, in fact, they were doing tons and tons of reimbursements. One is Wedelity, Jim Glogowski, and the other is QCOM, which is Mark Failing and that group. So they both have a lot of experience doing that kind of stuff. So, they may also be a resource as well as the FCC attorneys. But yes, you've got to put in these 13 things. Plus, as we learned in the FCC NAB meeting, you got to have it notarized. You got to do 2 copies, and you got to get it to them. And then you got to look at these 6 items. 1, the information contained in it is accurate and the best, the best of your knowledge. And remember, once again, under penalty of perjury. And number 2, all the earth stations for which the lump sum is being elected will not have ceased operation within the previous 90 days. So, I got an email from somebody asking about, hey, we've got 3 dishes and each one's got polarity, got both polarities, and boy, we can get a lot of money, $50,000 or something like that. Well, you know what? You've got to certify that's been, that's been operational. And if it hasn't been, if it hasn't been operational for 90 days, well, what's operation? Does that mean I'm receiving programming off of that polarity, or does that mean that it's, powered up? You're taking on responsibilities and details that you may not, or none of us may have any notice about. Number 3, the incumbent earth stations intend to continue to receive content from the satellite operation, or or undertaking necessary transition actions in accordance with the timeline once again, you're going to work with the transition plan. So you're going to take on the responsibility to stay in touch with Intelsat or SES. And number 4, you're going to coordinate with them. So you're going to make yourself available. And then these last 2 are about irrevocable. You can't claim additional reimbursements, and then irrevocable claims against the commission. So, you're taking it on. And then the filing requirements talks about electronic filing, but, there's not a form. You've got to write something on letterhead and sign it and get it notarized, and not really sure how you would go about electronically filing that. But the paper filers, you can have it sent, priority mail. And if it were me, I'd send it earlier so that it was there before 9/14 if I was going to do it. So,
But even with that, with all the information you have to supply, that doesn't even begin to touch the technical aspects of your site. I mean, that doesn't to know whether the disc could be moved or if the bolts are rusted or whatever. So that doesn't even cover that.
Right. And if you don't take the lump sum and you're under the Intelsat or SES under their transition plan, when they reach out to that installer, and the installer reaches out to you and he does that site survey, he's going to determine whether whether that dish is viable. And then, they're going to put that as maybe it needs replacing, or maybe, if it's still a model being, it's a Prodlin or a Patriot or somebody that's still being put together, or a DH, then they're going to order the parts to make it whole. Once again, back to their idea, we're going to make you whole.
So the bottom line, the September 14th, if you're going to take the lump sum, you have to do all this work before the 14th of September. If you're not going to take the lump sum and you want the satellite provider to do all the work, you do nothing. Is that correct? You don't have to file anything?
Yeah. If you're just going to stay out of it, you don't want the lump sum, just don't do anything. What will happen is, once the lump sum elections come through, the FCC will make a list of those. SES and Intelsat have this huge database. They've got you, marked in this. They've spent thousands of hours putting this together, and what they'll do is cross-reference those, and they'll pull those out of their plan. And if you're not in that lump sum thing, then you're still in the plan. I mean, they're talking to us about putting filters in, as early as next month. So they're just waiting for the lump sum, and they're going to start putting filters.
The lump sum will not be available by the end of business day, will it? It's going to take him in. I heard rumors about a year before
you get money. You get money back.
Yeah, the lump sum.
Oh, yeah, I mean, they're not going to start See, that money's not going to get put into the clearinghouse until after the auction. So, I had no idea how soon Verizon and AT&T, after the December auction, when's their money due to the FCC, and then that money's got to get transferred to the clearinghouse, and then the clearinghouse has got to go through the lump sums, and they're going to check. They're going to go to Google Earth. They're going to, make sure that, yep, there's a dish there, and some point after that, they're going to approve payment. What, are they going to do the top 46 markets first and then get around to, Tuscaloosa? I don't know. There's a couple more questions here, Larry. So Mark Forrest said, if our program provider decides to move from Intelsat Bird to SES Bird in the near future, will the filters installed still work? Yes, all the filters are, were designed by SES and Intelsat together to, in the case of the red filter, to block signals below 3820. The the blue filter, which will ultimately be everybody, after 2023, those will be, that'll block everything below 4,000 megahertz. So it's the same filter. And they've said, hey, look, we're going to try to work together on this stuff as much as we can. And so, if there's a switch or something like that, they're just going to take care of it. It's all going to go back. Kevin said, is there a list of the markets and timeline for those markets to be licensed for 5G? I see that it is the top 46 markets, but markets for what? It's population centers. There is a list. Kevin, I have your email. I'll grab that list because it was in one of the filings, and I pulled it off the FCC website. So I'll grab that list and I'll email that to you, Kevin. Mark Boris, bottom line is, you would recommend we not take the money, but to let the SAT companies take care of things. Mark, I'm not recommending anything. I am not an FCC attorney. I don't play one on TV. What I would do is try to give you as much information as we have, because you guys all have jobs. Satellite's that's my full-time job. So we've been fortunate to be in some meetings. We've been fortunate to be connected. We buy space segment from Intelsat, SES, and Intelsat, so we have certain connections, and we've gathered some information that while you're fixing a transmitter or selling ads, is not top of mind to you, and what we're trying to do is give you the information for you to make the best decision you can. I mean, either way you go, you may say, well, I should have turned right when I turned left, but what I would say about choosing not to take the lump sum is that you're not going to have any liability. That's what I would say about that, information wise.
Do your homework.
Yeah. Please do your homework. I hope I give you some information that helps you find information that's important to you. XBC again. So if we don't do anything, we fall under the SAT. Yes, you fall under their transition plan. You don't have to tell anybody. They know who you are. If you're on, Westwood One's affiliate list, they've got you. If you're, on NPR's affiliate list, Intelsat's got you. Donald Eastman, any idea of the implication of selecting transition or discontinuing question 13? We run a small state network and are looking to transition away. That was, that's, I guess you have to specifically tell them what you're going to be doing. And it doesn't say what the implication of, you're telling them you're continuing or telling them you're going away. I know that, the earlier in the public notice, and you can pull up the whole public notice. All you got to do is Google, final public notice cost catalog, FCC midband, and it'll take you right to the PDF. We also have on our website, linkupcommunications.com, we have a couple of kind of like decision matrices. It's like, here's the pros and cons. Pros and cons if you're just a affiliate with a downlink or if you're a small network. So you can kind of look and see what the pros and cons are. And Kirk, yes. Yep. Thanks, Kirk. Let me know. Can I have a copy of the timeline also? Tim Berry at UTK. Yeah. Also, I got asked by somebody who knows you, Tim, about a affiliate of yours an older gentleman had questions. So I sent some of the information to them, but I'll send you a copy of that top 46 markets and all that kind of stuff. So Barry sure proves the FCC. One size does not fit all. You're absolutely right, Barry. Mark Boriskin, I would also be interested in the list. Okay, got it. And Larry, yeah. Thank you, Richard. Thanks again, Tim.
Okay, Mark.
That's all the questions in chat.
Okay, I appreciate the time that you gave us and the information, and I'm sure people can get a hold of you at your website if you have any more questions. And thank you for your time. And John, I want to thank you for being with us as well, and all the other participants. And once again, we will have this up on the ABA Engineering Academy YouTube site, and that will be we should have that up this afternoon. So we thank you for watching, and just contact us if you need anything. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Larry.